value and self-worth growing up in the church speaking. That's where my broadcasting career began. Everybody has a pattern in their life. James Hilton in The Soul's Code calls it the acorn in the oak, where at a very early age something happens for most people that sparks what it is you're supposed to do the rest of your life. At the time I was speaking in the church in Kosciuszko, obviously it was like an apartheid state for black people. We were called colored people then. I had no idea that television was a possibility for a black woman or a colored woman at the time. When I first saw the Supremes on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1968, it was like a miracle to see talented, intelligent, beautiful women on television. And for many years, I wanted to be Diana Ross. I wanted to, just whatever I saw. I wanted to be Diana Ross. And it was not until, my broadcasting career that I understood that I could be a better me than anybody else.
You were reading at age 3.
I was reading at age 3 because it was just my grandmother and myself. And she was very religious, and so I learned to read Bible stories. By the time I was 3 years old, I knew all the Bible stories by heart. And obviously, some of the more prominent names, like those of you who are Christian, Nicodemus, remember Nicodemus asked Jesus, must I go to the woman be born again? So I learned all the big ones, Nicodemus, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which came in handy when I moved into kindergarten. As I moved into kindergarten, I was already reading, and I wrote my kindergarten teacher a letter the very first day, because I'm in there and all these kids are like doing their ABCs. So bored. And really, I started thinking, how am I going to get myself out of here? So I went to Miss New, wrote her a letter. I think I told you the story. Dear Miss New, I do not belong here. Because I know a lot of big words. And then I wrote on the page every big word I could think of. Hippopotamus, Mississippi, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, very impressive in kindergarten. She took me to the principal's office, the one and only time I've ever been in a principal's office, and asked who wrote this. They made me sit down and write it again. And I got moved up to the first grade the next day.
Woo!
I see you. That's how I got into Ball State.
True.
And how is it that your grandmother was your principal caregiver at 3 years old?
Because born out of wedlock, which at the time was like, it was terrible to be born out of wedlock. My father met my mother in school. He says to this day, if you say, look, I just asked him a couple weeks ago, did you ever love her? He goes, no, she was wearing a pool skirt.
Oh.
He goes, I wanted to know what was under that pool skirt. It came down to that. And he convinced her to have sex with him after school one day, under some oak trees. He says he remembers the leaves being on her back of her skirt, having to explain that to my grandmother. And that was it. They never went out again. They never saw each other again. When I was born, my mother sent him, he had gone into the army, and she sent him a note saying, send money. You have a daughter. She's been doing the same thing since, my mother.
And your grandmother, strict and nurturing?
Very strict. Very strict. So I was raised in an environment that would clearly be called abusive today. I was raised in an environment where children should be seen and not heard. That was the adage in the house.
You were struck. When you say abusive?
Oh, I was beaten regularly. I remember one of my most vivid memories of getting beaten was my grandmother's very religious, and we were in church all the time. And I remember being beaten, and because I had gone to the well to get some water. Y'all may not know what the well is, but gone to the well to get some water. We carry it in a bucket, and I was playing with my fingers in the water. And my grandmother had seen me out the window playing, and she didn't like it, and she whipped me before church. and whipped me so badly that I had welts on my back. So we would have welts, and the welts would bleed. And then when I put on my Sunday dress, I was bleeding from the welts. And then she was very upset with me because I got blood on the dress. So I remember getting another whipping for getting blood on the dress. And I was raised in an environment where you're not allowed to even, hopefully nobody was in an environment this bad, where even when you are then punished, you're not allowed to have any feelings about the punishment. So while my grandmother was whipping me, she'd say, you better hush your mouth, you better stop that. And if you would have, your feelings are hurt when you're beat. And if I were to say, not say anything, but look like I was upset that I just got beaten, I could very well get a whipping again. So you have to act like it's never happened.
Was it cultural? Was it social? Had this happened to her? Where does that come from?
I don't know.
Why
I
is she
assume that
motivated?
it is. You know what? I assume that certainly it is cultural. I know that there are many, certainly African American kids who were raised in homes where they were hit. And it was only when I became friends with Gail and she raised, and not only did she raise her kids and never hit them, but Gail was the first African American I'd ever known who'd never been hit. So most people that I grew up with were also hit. So it was cultural. It was social. I do believe that the beating of children came from learned behavior, being a descendant of slaves, that you learned from the master. That's how you punish, that's how you correct, that's how you discipline. And also religious in some ways. I think many people interpret the passage in the Bible that says, spare the rod and spoil the child. They think the rod is the stick that you beat the children, instead of a rod being a device for guidance. You know,
looking back on that, and many people have their own version of this story. Did it motivate you in any way? Did it correct behavior in any way? Did you become inured to it?
I think when you are beaten on a regular basis, I think, I've never had therapy. That's why it was so interesting talking to you. So I've never had therapy, but I did have the Oprah Winfrey show. And I paid attention to all of those experts over the years. What I now see when I look back and I'm introspective about my life, that it absolutely wipes off your self-esteem.